Welcome, Planet Houston, to Geek Salad's Retro Movie Reviews from the Geek Salad Podcast. I'm Andy.
And I'm Mike.
And today we conclude Oscar season with our look back at the 1995 Academy Awards, and we ask the burning question: did Braveheart deserve to win Best Picture over the other four movies nominated for Best Picture that year?
No.
Okay.
That's it.
This was your choice. This was your choice for the year. So
Yes.
Why don't you get started with the movie that should have won?
The movie that should have won is in my top 5 favorite movies of all time.
Okay.
Apollo 13.
Very good movie. Honestly, one that I didn't truly love until years and years later.
Oh, okay.
You know what? Part of it was, at that point, I had kind of been Tom Hanks out, as evidenced by last week's discussion about Forrest Gump and whether or not that deserved to win.
Right.
It was yet again another Oscar bait movie starring Tom Hanks and Gary Sinise. Let's put Gary Sinise in that thing as well. And then this thing had Oscar bait written all over it.
That doesn't defeat the fact that it was a very, very good movie as well.
Oh, no. I agree with you. I think it's an excellent movie, but I think that having a few years removed from its initial hype really make you appreciate what a good movie it really is.
Also, despite, other than unlike Philadelphia and Forrest Gump, this movie, it stars Tom Hanks, but it doesn't really star Tom Hanks. It stars a cast of people, including Tom Hanks. He was the lead, but there were like co-leads all over.
Right. His was the face on the poster, though. When you get down to it, Jim Lovell is the guy who guides everything. He's not the one who got sick on the on the thing. He's the one who gets to do all the narration. It's his story, and the other two guys are, I don't want to say there for the ride because that cheapens what they do. But
it's based on the book written by Jim Lovell, so obviously he's going to kind of be front and center. But you could easily say that Ed Harris was a massive part in this one. Kevin Bacon was huge. Bill Paxton was huge. Gary Sinise was huge.
Right. And Kathleen Quinlan, who was nominated for an Oscar for this. Honestly, out of everybody in the movie, I liked her the least, only because I felt like, getting into the conversation of the Oscars, it really seemed like every scene that she was in was designed to just be that, for Best Supporting Actress, Kathleen Quinlan in Apollo 13. Here's a shot. And it's made for that nomination, B-roll that they do. Same thing with Ed Harris to a somewhat lesser extent.
Maybe, but I you could say it's that they're kind of Oscar bait, but the fact is that they did still do the hell out of all of their scenes, and those scenes were very impactful.
Right. And again, I'm not trying to take anything from the movie. Because I saw it in the theater in 1995.
As did I.
I feel that having a couple years removed from it, and not even that many years, like you watched it in 1998, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I really did sleep on this movie. This is a good movie.
I actually saw this in the theaters with my dad. Actually.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I remember right before it came out, I think this was back when I was living in Virginia, so I had a totally new set of friends. And we're sitting there in the movie theater, and one of these guys, Wade, he's sitting like three people away from me, and he taps me on the knee. And I think we were going to see Batman Forever. And he looks at me like, Andy, Apollo 13, do they live or die? And I'm like, they live, because no man has died no human being, American, has died in space yet.
No. There have been people that have died in the upper atmosphere.
Entry, yes, exactly. The upper atmosphere, yes, but in re-entry, no. So that was, if you knew that kind of history, it was still kind of like, all right, I know they're gonna make it out, but it's still pretty tense.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, just like Braveheart, the score was done by James Horner.
Yes, yes. And this is up there with among my favorite James Horner scores, actually.
It's one of mine too, and it's primarily because he never went back to the well on this one and used it for all his other stuff. Like when we get to discussing Braveheart, the Braveheart score essentially morphed into the Titanic score and then morphed into the Avatar score and the next few scores that he did before he passed.
Well, I mean, there was. I honestly put that kind of more on James Cameron. He was probably like, "Remember what you did there? I kind of like that. But let's try and get that here."
But give me penny whistles this time.
Yeah, because James Cameron wants to control every aspect of his movies because he's like that.
Don't get me started about Aquaman. Don't get me started about Aquaman.
Don't get me started about Alita.
Yeah, okay. All right. I mean, in terms of Apollo 13's Oscar worthiness, obviously we already went over this. Stellar cast. Very tightly directed. I was kind of shocked Ron Howard didn't get an Oscar nomination for Best Director, which I think doomed it. This is what doomed it in the at the Oscars at this point.
Yeah, yeah. As you mentioned last week, there's only been one movie that the director was not nominated, but the picture still won. Well, I mean, there's been a few, but the most recent one was Argo.
Right, Argo, and prior to that, it was Driving Miss Daisy.
Oh,
or as I like to call it, Green Book, without the with the races not reversed.
Who was the director of Driving Miss Daisy?
Bruce Breatherford.
That doesn't really help.
No. I think he's Australian. He's just one of those. Just you need to hire a director. He's your director for hire. Okay. But yeah, Ron Howard, I mean, puts pretty much as much of a signature stamp for his output at this time in that movie. Honestly, if I really kind of wish he won Best Director for this instead of A Beautiful Mind.
Yeah. I mean, if you just watch some of the behind the scenes aspects of this thing, and you can see exactly how much effort they put into it. I mean, rather than do like the standard, people on these little seesaws to simulate zero G, they actually did the parabola.
They went up in the vomit comet.
Yeah.
Yes. Which actually is really cool. They filmed a lot of it in zero G.
Yeah, they could get like 30 seconds worth of footage per parabola.
Oh.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the toll that puts on your body, especially for untrained people. Like, I can't imagine that Bill Paxton and Kevin Bacon were really like, no more.
Yeah. I'm guessing that vomit that Bill Paxton did was probably real.
More than likely. That is method acting to its extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all in all, it is a great movie. I feel that what makes it really cool too is that it's more of a quest for survival than it is a quest to go to the moon.
Yeah,
and the whole thing that you feel Lovell's loss that he never managed to set foot on the moon.
Oh, actually, if you ever pick if you haven't picked this up, shame on you. But watch it with the audio commentary by Jim and Marilyn Lovell.
Okay.
The scene where it's like they're Apollo 13 is going over the dark side of the moon, and Jim Lovell is actually looking out, and he's imagining himself on the moon.
Yeah.
In the commentary, Marilyn actually breaks down and starts crying at that moment because she was like, she wanted so badly for that to be real.
Right.
It's a really touching moment.
There's actually a really good web series that I subscribe to on YouTube called History Buffs. And he primarily covers the historical accuracy of movies that take place with actual events. He did cover Braveheart. He also covered Apollo 13, and the Apollo 13 one is it's a very interesting watch, and definitely one I would recommend doing. Definitely subscribe to Simon Hodges' channel. It's really educational.
I'm guessing there was probably less wrong with Apollo 13 than there was with Braveheart.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, because for the most part, most of the participants were still alive.
Hmm.
And it was interesting too that they really do hammer a lot of that the space programs, they've lost interest in the space program.
Yeah.
Which at the time, yeah, they'd already sent a whole bunch of people up to the moon. So what's the point of keep going back up there?
It's like it's like they mentioned in the movie. Actually, you know, they make the moon landing about as exciting as I forget what the analogy was, but they make it not exciting.
Right. Okay. So another movie at the time I felt stood a very good chance of winning because it had just kind of taken the world over was Babe. Laugh if you will. A talking pig movie should, by all rights, not be as awesome as this movie was. It is an incredible story. It's a very tender story, tender, the meat falling off the bone. Oh, come on.
No.
No. It's a very sweet story about a pig trying to find his identity, and his identity is as a sheepdog. And the interesting thing too is that it was produced by George Miller, who was pretty much best known for the Mad Max series of movies.
Yeah.
Go fig. It's actually, I think it might have been his first Oscar nomination, was as a producer for Babe.
Yeah. I mean, because I mean, he doesn't really have a huge. I mean, he's had a few movies, but nothing really that like kind of screams Oscar.
Right. And you know, and again, I was shocked when Fury Road got so many Oscar nominations a few years ago, and he was nominated for Best Director for that. But the nice thing about Babe is that first thing that they did the mouths on the animals right. Like last week I had complained about the special effects in Forrest Gump, like looking like they could have just put a little extra effort in there. I felt that the animals' mouths moving in synchronization to the voices worked really, really well. And it's a very clever movie built on little vignettes that lead up to the grand sheepdog competition. And it just goes to show what an amazing actor James Cromwell is.
Yeah, well, that goes without saying.
I mean, he is a very good actor to begin with, but the fact that he's just this old set in his ways farmer who just happens to regard this pig just by picking him up and looking at him, and his wife wants to eat him, and he just decides he's going to make him into a sheepdog.
Just why not, right?
It just really is fantastic. And there's this great scene in the movie where he's getting, you know, it's the night before. It's actually, Babe was left out in the cold, and he's trying to nurse him back to health, and he sings this song to him. And then he does this jig, and it's just so funny just seeing the farmer just get so just excited and lively. And it's just so out of character for him at that point. So I really love the movie. I felt that in terms of just earnestness, it's just an incredibly real and earnest movie about talking animals.
I mean, I was quite shocked when I heard that it hadn't been nominated for that year.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm taking nothing away from it. I've never seen it personally, but I've heard nothing but great things about it.
It really is a lovely movie, and I think it kind of helps that it came out around the time that Disney started taking that dip. 95 was the year that Pocahontas was released.
Yeah.
And that's all I've got to say about that.
I mean, yeah, sometimes I wish more like just feel good, just fun little family flicks would be nominated for Oscars, because a lot of them are really high quality, but they just they always get drowned out for the deep and depressing biopics, and someone's gonna die at the end of this movie, so it's got to be great.
That's what the extension from the up to 10 nominees was supposed to do, and this year they finally did it.
Finally,
It,
just what?
it only took 10 years. It only took 10 years. I mean, there were others. I mean, District 9 in a normal year would have never been nominated for Best Picture. I'm sure I could name a few others.
Yeah. The last time I was like kind of surprised by an Oscar win, surprised, not surprised, was probably Return of the King.
Yeah, well, that one, I mean, that was just kind of like, it was its career award because it was the third movie
Yeah.
in a very well-regarded trilogy.
Yeah, but I mean, since after that, it's just been which was the most depressing biopic, and which one has someone die at the end? That's a winner. Hey, I was right.
No, I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I mean,
$1 Million Baby.
well, that's $1 Million Baby. That was 2004. I mean, if we're talking about the modern era of the 10, the up to 10s, I mean, there's been some fun stuff in there. I mean, Slumdog Millionaire, which does have its depressing moments and is definitely Oscar bait, has some fun stuff in there. The Shape of Water is not entirely a dour movie. Yeah, sure, 12 Years a Slave is pretty much exactly what you're getting. But like, and Moonlight as well. But I mean, there's plenty of stuff out there that is just, I mean, Birdman. Birdman is not a movie about death. Birdman is very much a movie about life.
I still have to watch that. I own it.
It's a very interesting movie, but we're getting off topic.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. Now the other two nominees. Another one I thought stood a really good shot for the obvious Oscar reasons was Ang Lee's Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah. What was this? This
is Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet.
No. Was this after Brokeback?
No. Oh no. Brokeback was 10 years later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, Sense and Sensibility, directed by Ang Lee, screenwritten by Emma Thompson, who won an Oscar for it. This was the start of the mid to late 90s love affair with Jane Austen.
Okay.
I mean, the year prior, BBC had put out their Colin Firth Pride and Prejudice, which my wife still adores to this day. The year after, you had Emma with Gwyneth Paltrow, and you just kept getting these Jane Austen adaptations. I honestly think Sense and Sensibility might be the best out of all of them because Emma Thompson, this is the kind of thing you can tell just by listening to interviews with her. She's got a wit about her.
Oh, yeah.
That translates really well to Jane Austen's manners politics of the time.
Well, I mean, she's just witty about everything, basically.
She is, and she's got a fantastic cast to work with too. It's her, as I mentioned, Kate Winslet is in it. Alan Rickman, Hugh Grant,
yeah,
and I'm sure a ton of other fantastic British actors. If I look at the cast list, I'm sure I will also see people like Hugh Laurie is in it. Imelda Staunton. So tons of great British names.
Yeah,
in that movie. And then the final nominee was Il Postino, the Postman, which was kind of a weird one because it was riding on the sentimentality that its actor Massimo Troisi had died before the movie was released, so it got the posthumous Oscar nomination. He didn't win. He did not win that year, but he was nominated.
Yeah, I mean, every now and then, the Academy does kind of feel the need to nominate a foreign film for Best Picture.
Yeah, and that's happening this year with Roma, but Roma's a different story.
Yeah.
In terms of that, even though it's also nominated for Best Foreign Film. I've seen this movie. I can't tell you I remember this movie. My ex really enjoyed this one. So we had watched it once or twice, but I really have no memory of that, much like I have very little memory of the mid-90s.
Fair enough.
So that brings us to the winner, Braveheart. I have a very complicated relationship with Braveheart. What about you?
I would agree with that. I've seen the movie, and I did think the movie was good. Um, some of the liberties taken with history were questionable.
You think?
Like I don't know if William Wallace fathered the next King of England.
He did not. The majority of the histrionics of Braveheart are absolute horse shit. On the positive end, this is a beautiful looking movie. I do like James Horner's score as much as I knock that this was the mold that every other James Horner score became. It is a beautiful movie to look at. It's well costumed. Mel Gibson did a good job surrounding himself with better actors because he is not very good and did not get an Oscar nomination for acting.
Yeah. Well, one thing that always stands out to me with this movie is when I was in college. I went to college. I think 96 or 97 was my first year in there, and one of my history classes, the history teacher specifically said, "I don't want a million papers on William Wallace."
Right.
Because apparently that was a big deal the year that Braveheart came out.
Yeah, I'm very interested actually in seeing how Scottish people actually regard not so much William Wallace himself, but this movie. If they regard this as being hey, at least he's bringing light to what William Wallace did, or if they're like, oh God, this is embarrassing.
Well, I think now, given what we know now about the director and star, it might be a little bit more embarrassing.
Yeah. Here's the thing with this movie is that last year Netflix released a movie called Outlaw King, with Chris Pine, and it's about Robert the Bruce,
who was kind of villainized in Braveheart.
He was a conflicted. He was neither pro nor antagonist. He was just kind of there, and it depended on which side he needed to take at the time. The thing is that Outlaw King pretty much comes up to right after William Wallace is dead. But because of the distorted history that Braveheart presents, it makes it very hard to follow Outlaw King because they screwed up the timeline so badly. It's tough to tell what actually did and did not happen in Outlaw King. I mean, my wife, who is very much a scholar of British history and stuff from Scotland, Ireland, a lot of that she had to kind of like, yep, nope, wrong. No, this happened. Nope, that's wrong. No, that was Braveheart. And it that drove me nuts. Pretty much what bothers me about this movie. First of all, one thing that bothers me about this movie is kind of like the bro nature that this movie is taken on. This is one of these movies that a lot of bros get really excited about because you got the big speech on the horse in front of the army before you go into battle. You got the big battle cry of freedom.
Which, don't get me wrong, it is a great scene. I really like that scene.
It's a moving scene, but this movie on the whole really makes. Well, first of all, it really just tries to make it the ballad of Saint William Wallace. Yeah. I don't believe William Wallace does anything that would be deemed by the audience as being wrong. Mel Gibson is very conscious in the fact that he is trying to make a flawless character. Mel Gibson is also very conscious too that he's making this movie where there is the one benevolent hero and the dastardly villainous kings, and his scheming gay son, and when William the Longshanks pushes his lover out the window, there is definitely a break put in there for applause, which is terrifying when you know that Mel Gibson is a noted anti-Semite, homophobe, and probably a ton of other stuff too. I believe believe he also hit his wife.
I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah. That said, I believe Braveheart, not the best movie released this year. 95 was a weird year to begin with, where there weren't that many great movies. I can think of two that did not get nominated, which we'll go over in just a second. This was a career award for Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson was very much the Hollywood establishment. They needed to give him this because they were never going to give it to him again. And that's before he called the cops sugar tits.
Yeah.
Oh, and also that he blamed the Jews for all the wars in the world.
Yeah, he did that. And do you think he's ever actually apologized?
I believe if any apologies did come, it was the "I'm sorry if I offended you" style of non-apology apology.
I'm sorry that I got caught.
Yeah, exactly. It would have never been an issue had I not been caught.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because none of that really came out. I mean, the only reason why I knew a lot about Mel, the man, was that one of the guys who worked with me at Suncoast, another one of the managers at Suncoast, was very, very much of the other persuasion. And he just seethed with everything about Mel Gibson. I asked him, what is your problem with Mel Gibson? And he told me about, like, he was pulling up articles and all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, what a monster. So it's been one of those things that
it was an open secret until it became an open not secret.
An open non-secret. Exactly, sugar tits. So yeah. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on Braveheart. Honestly, I know, and this is not something we're talking about this year, but I know this movie gets compared to Gladiator a lot, primarily because they're both very much of the same type of macho, historical ilk. Gladiator is 10 times the movie Braveheart is. You've never seen Gladiator, have you?
Oh, no, I've seen Gladiator.
I love Gladiator.
I don't love it nearly as much as you do, but
yeah.
I do think it's a good movie.
I really, really love it. That's just me, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Braveheart, I thought it was a fun movie, but it's also a movie I really have no need to watch ever again.
No, I mean, I'm trying to remember the last time. It's been at least 8 or 9 years since I've watched it.
Yeah, I think I watched it probably mid-90s. I mean, 97, 98 or so.
Right.
And yeah, I was like, okay, cool. Don't need to see it again.
So what are movies that didn't get nominated that should have been in this field? What?
You go first because I need to look this one up.
All right. One movie I felt really kind of got shafted, except for they got one nomination, was Seven. Seven is very much such a great psychological thriller. It was a big hit when it came out. And the interesting thing about 95 is, as I mentioned before, it was a weak year for movies, but the last quarter, like October, November, and December, had some fantastic stuff in there. Seven is one of those movies. Seven is a fantastic movie.
I can't go with you with that one because I don't like David Fincher's stuff.
I like certain David Fincher. It also introduced the notion of dirty Brad Pitt. That and another movie released at the end of the year, 12 Monkeys.
For me, even when he's dirty Brad Pitt, he's still really, really handsome.
I understand that, but I think that dirty Brad Pitt is better actor Brad Pitt.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Another movie, and I know you'll agree with me on this one, even though now it kind of isn't cool to be all in on this movie. Thanks, director and actor. The Usual Suspects.
Yeah, no, I definitely think this one. I would have put this on my nominations.
I would have replaced El Postino with it. I probably would maybe, I mean, I may have replaced Babe with it as well. The thing is, this movie has a lot of heat behind it. It won the 2 Oscars it was nominated for: Best Original Screenplay and Best Supporting Actor. Kevin Spacey, that name retracted from the record books.
Yeah, it's such a shame that this is such an incredibly great movie because it's got a couple of really, really terrible human beings behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I mean, again, talking about LA Confidential, which came out 10 years, 12 years later. 2 years later. Good Lord. I just think that this movie is one of those movies that it is so very much respectful of its kind of like source, that noir material, but at the same time has a twist that beats every twist that you will ever see in any movie before or after.
Oh, I see. I watching it the first time, I kind of had an idea of what the main twist was, but when all the pieces start clicking into place, my jaw just dropped. I'm like, oh wow, this is one of the most brilliantly written movies I've ever seen.
And if you said you saw it coming, you're a goddamn liar.
Yeah, the only way you see that coming is if someone tells you.
Right, exactly. Oh, by the way, it's a great movie. Do you see anything else on there that you think should have been nominated for Best Picture?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, the story may be kind of vanilla, but just for the audacity of being the first of many Toy Story.
That won a special Oscar. This is before they had the feature length animation Oscar. So what they would do and stuff like this, they would give it a special Oscar. It was outside of Beauty and the Beast at the time. No other animated movie had ever been nominated for Best Picture.
But I think purely for just the audacity of being the very first fully CG animated movie, and it not only that, but a fully CG damn good movie.
Right. Well, it got a special Oscar because that's how they used to handle those things back in the day.
Well, I mean that's how they handled Walt Disney when it came out with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So we don't think it's a good enough movie to be nominated, but we'll give you a special Oscar.
Right. We've got this movie here about slaves that we have to take care of. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, did I say slaves? I meant slave owners.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else in there?
Ooh, Highlander 3.
Shut up. Shut up.
Yeah, I'd have to go through all this.
Yeah, but, there aren't a whole lot. I mean,
yeah.
Christ. I mean, even Scorsese put out essentially Goodfellas 2, the casinoing that year. So it just wasn't. It was not a great year for movies, and unfortunately, I don't feel that the best movie won Best Picture. Even though I think it does have the staying power today, again, because it's a bro classic.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just looking through. It was really a kind of a shitty year, wasn't it?
It was. It really, really was a shitty year.
There were some good movies, but not really ones that were considered Oscar nomination.
Right. Material. And 96 is a weird one, too, but we don't need to get into that right now.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, do you agree with us on our picks? Do you think that Braveheart deserved to win Best Picture? If not, what do you feel did deserve to win Best Picture? Please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to Geek Salad's podcast. Don't forget to like this video. And Mike and I host a little podcast online called Geek Salad. You can get to us at www.geeksalad.podbean.com. We are available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Music. You can also listen to full copyright approved audio here at YouTube as well. Our current episode, we discuss the singles of 1989, and our albums episode is coming out later on this week.
Yeah, I need to look into that. I thought I had edited it enough to get it cleared, but
yeah, I haven't seen any emails about that. But so you can also follow us on Facebook, Geek Salad Podcast, and on Twitter at Geek Salad Radio. So until next time, I'm Andy.
I'm Mike, and this is Ninja.
Hi, Ninja. Go forth, be nerdful, and we'll talk to you later.